Okay, so this first video is going to take you through how to tackle impressions questions and how to locate the correct information to make sure that you can answer the questions fully. So it's probably best if you get yourself a piece of lined paper and a pen and a highlighter, and if you'd like the extract from this, ask your teacher and I'll see if I can pop it onto your blog. Okay, so let's get started. So impressions questions, locating information. So the purpose of this tutorial is to understand the ways in which we can form an impression of a character in a text. And how we're going to do that, we're going to look at an extract from a book by Robert Cormier called Heroes. You might have read a little bit of this in your class, and we're going to generate some impressions of a character in Heroes. Why is this important? Well, as part of component 1 in the section A English language exam, you often get this type of question, an impressions question that asks you to look at your impressions of a character or a setting. So first of all, here's our question. Write it down on your piece of paper and pause the video. Okay, now let's have a look at the type of things that the key words in this question, the type of things that hopefully you've underlined. So, what impressions do you get of Larry LaSalle? So first of all, we can see that this word impressions, that tells us that it's asking us for our opinion, not necessarily our opinions, but what thoughts we have on a character, how a character is being presented. Okay. And then we get the name of the character, Larry LaSalle. So we know that that's the name that we're looking out for in terms of gathering evidence. Okay, so I'd like you, when I've finished talking, to pause the video and read this extract. This extract comes from Heroes. It's from chapter 4 in Heroes. And Heroes follows the story of a young man called Francis Cassavant, who's recently returned from war. It's set in a place called Frenchtown in America. He's recently returned from war, and we don't know why, but he's on a mission of revenge. This is him reflecting back on meeting someone who ends up being very important to him in his life, a man called Larry LaSalle. And he's looking back on the time where he met him. Now, Larry LaSalle is what we would refer to probably as a youth worker. He works at community centre. And this is the first time that all the teenagers at the community centre have met him. So read the extract and have a think about what impressions you get of Larry LaSalle. If you've got the extract on paper, what I'd like you to do is try and highlight any of the pieces of evidence that you think would help you to answer the question. Okay, pause the video and let's get that done. Okay, so let's have a look at the evidence that hopefully you might have found. Let's read it through together, and we're going to look at some of the things that give us an impression of character, some important information. If there's anything you haven't highlighted, highlight it as we go along. The centre opened its doors the day after St Jude's parochial school closed for summer vacation. I stood with the other kids at 9 o'clock in the June morning in front of the building. A tall, slim man stepped into view, a lock of blonde hair tumbling over his forehead. A smile revealed dazzling movie star teeth. Okay, so I think that's key information about him. There's certainly more under the surface of that, so I've highlighted it. Good morning, he said. My name is Larry LaSalle. Is that his real name? Joey LeBlanc asked in a whisper that carried over the crowd. So look there, that isn't necessarily describing Larry LaSalle, it's a character reaction to him. It's important that when we deal with impressions of character questions, we don't just look at how they're physically described or how they act. We also need to look at how other characters react towards him, because that reveals things in itself. Joey LeBlanc asked in a whisper that carried over the crowd. He was often punished by the nuns for talking out of turn. That's right, it's real, Larry LaSalle said. And for some reason, the crowd applauded. Again, that's a character reaction, so I've highlighted that. Larry LaSalle had the broad shoulders of an athlete and the narrow hips of a dancer. He was both. He swung the bat with authority as he hit home runs in games at the Sandlot next door, and later led us through vigorous exercises and calisthenics. He was also a dancer with a touch of Fred Astaire in his walk, his feet barely touching the floor. He could tap dance with machine gun speed and make daring leaps across the stage, but most of all he was a teacher, leading classes in dancing, arts and crafts, organising a choral group, directing musical shows. Make sure you've got that evidence highlighted. Then let's look at how we would generate our impressions. Okay, so gathering impressions. Let's look just at the very first part of this extract, and I'm going to model to you how I would go about getting my impressions. So first of all, I'm going to look at this quotation that says he's got dazzling movie star teeth. Well, my first impression of that is that he seems almost glamorous. He's clearly an attractive figure. We've got the quotation, tall, slim man and blonde hair tumbling over his forehead to back that up. But the fact that he's got movie star teeth almost seems to imply that he's like a celebrity, he's like a movie star. And the word dazzling, he's almost hypnotic. There's something powerful about him. So there's lots of impressions there that I get from that evidence. Next, I would look at this quotation where Joey LeBlanc says, "Is that his real name?" Well, that to me says that the fact that he thinks that it's not his real name, or he's questioning whether it's his real name, he sounds like something out of the ordinary. His name sounds strange, it sounds foreign, it sounds exotic to the kids. So he's clearly had an impact on them. And perhaps he's an outsider as well. He's just new to the town, but that name sort of sets him apart from anything else that they've ever experienced. So he's coming across as a very powerful man in a number of different ways. Okay, now it's your turn. So let's have a look at the rest of that extract. I'd like you to pause the video and I'd like you to see if you can come up with a few impressions. There are around about 4 or 5 different impressions that I think you can get from the rest of the extract. So pause the video and write them down on your lined paper. Okay, let's see what you got. So check your answers against these. Hopefully you've noticed that he's presented as a leader, first of all. It said he led us, he directed us. Secondly, he comes across as multi-talented, very varied. He's a dancer, but he's also an athlete. And the quotation I've got there for that impression is he was both. Thirdly, you might have something like he's powerful. It uses words like authority and broad shoulders. He's physically powerful and probably powerful in the sense that people are willing to follow him as well. And maybe you got the idea that he's almost too perfect. Did you notice that it said that he tap danced with machine gun speed, and that it seemed, although his feet barely touched the floor, he seems almost like an element of fantasy in a way, and perhaps he's just so perfect that perhaps he's almost too perfect. Perhaps it suggests that there's some possible fall of grace heading his way, perhaps. Okay, so just to review what we looked at today, we've looked at how to gather evidence when you are faced with an impressions question. The next step, obviously, is to communicate that evidence, and there will be future videos on how to embed quotations and come up with a response for that. So when we do get an impressions question, remember they're often based on your impressions of a character or a situation. Okay, thank you.